to all the people that is listening to us to live a life, so we'll be able to know if you enjoy it. I'd like to let you know the topics that we will talk about today. So just to be clear, today we'll be talking about the consequences and sequels that COVID-19 will leave along the next decade, making a specific emphasis in the laboral, economic, and health fields. To start with our podcast, I would like to introduce you to the people who will be joining us today. So let's welcome Paola Rodriguez, Wendy Ortiz, Roberto Machado, and your host Marina Ruiz. Let's begin. To begin with this topic, we need to make sure that everybody knows what we're talking about. So for all those people who still doesn't know what COVID-19 is, well, COVID-19 comes from a family of viruses which are known as coronavirus. This derivation can cause many different diseases, from a simple flu or from a simple cold to a more complex respiratory disease. The first case of COVID-19 was confirmed in Wuhan, China in December of 2019, and since then the virus has been spread around the world and in thousands of daily cases, leaving as a consequence that the World Health Organization called a global pandemic. However, the first case that was detected in Mexico was in February 27 of 2020, which is why our country decided to follow the protocol, getting into a quarantine. The COVID-19 isn't just the responsible of thousands of deaths in Mexico. It has also brought different consequences which affects the Mexican population in many different ways. It's a highly infectious disease, usually characterized by fever, dry cough, and tiredness. As it was already mentioned, we will focus in three specific areas, which are the economic, the laboral, and the health field. So why don't we start with the one that concerns us all? Wendy, welcome. I hope you're okay. Tell me, what can you tell us about the COVID-19 in the health field?
Yes, I'm okay. Thanks for asking. So, about the COVID 19, I read that this situation can also cause depression and anxiety. And this is not only in the teenagers, the adults can also present one of these aftermaths because they are the most common to think about what is happening. So they create like a bubble of thinking where they keep their fears about this. And as we know, the depression has a constant sadness and they lose their interest of doing something. And in the other hand, the anxiety causes a lot of worries and fears in the people. So this will be too bad for the people because they will be frequently freaking it out about everything, and that is not good for their health.
Actually, that's pretty interesting, Wendy. I think we all should start to make our mental health one of the most important things in our lives. We should stop thinking that it's ridiculous to get worried about our mental health. And I think we all should stop making fun about it. Thank you. Roberto, you have anything to say about that?
Well, in the same part, yeah, actually, the circle COVID can be of various types, both physical and psychological. They depend largely in the severity of the disease and the medical care of the patient receiving. A patient who did not trigger hospitalization may not present any sequelae, while a patient who was admitted to intensive care might have several sequelae, both due to the disease and the immobility during the treatment, such as depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress syndrome, mobility problems derived from loss of muscle mass, failures in various body systems due to the attack that the virus has once we are infected. All these sequels are derived from the problems caused by COVID, the hospitalization, because as we mentioned before, COVID can be considered as a source of trauma, and trauma is physiological and physical. Unlike all trauma, many of the times after finished hospitalization, therapy will be needed due to the experiences during the treatment process against COVID-19.
But also, I would like to mention that there is still people that thinks that this is not true, so they do not take this with the importance that is needed. And it is for those people that this aftermath will increase and increase. So we need to stop and consider all those consequences and traumatic situation that the people are living before not taking the necessary preventive measures.
That is so true. Each person goes through a traumatic process when they are hospitalized because of a COVID 19 infection, but I would also like to hear what Paula has to say about this topic.
Well, as they mentioned before, they can have physical and psychological sequels and develop traumas such as obsessive compulsive disorder, phobias, hypochondria, anxiety, depression, between others.
You are absolutely right, but as we know, the COVID 19 doesn't affect just the health field, it also affects the economic and the social aspect. So, Paula, tell me, how does this affect the economic part?
Well, as we know, the COVID 19 has substantially affected the economic sector. In the field of production, there have been several repercussions, such as the loss of profits due to the fact that the borders have been closed.
Well, yes, not all of the sectors are affected, but did you know the petroleum price increased to a minimum of $14.54? That is an historical change.
Of course, the price of petroleum has fallen since many manufacturing companies depend on import inputs from other countries that have been affected by this virus. All these temporary disturbances of inputs and production due to the close of borders put many companies at the risk, and with the economy on the entire population.
But that isn't all. You know the exportation is very important to Mexico. Well, there is a reduction in the demand of Mexican goods in overseas.
Well, it's difficult that the economy in Mexico was drastically caused by the fall in exportation caused by the collapse of tourism, the collapse of remittance, and economic contraction and unemployment caused by the restrictions imposed to the control of the pandemic. In Mexico, the economic activity in the country slowed down significantly as a result of the decision to suppose all those activities considered non-essential. This is the so-called healthy distance. This decision inevitably affected several manufacturing and service sectors that had to close temporarily to ensure social sustainability. This decision affected the industrial activity, the service sector, such as accommodation services, food and beverage, commerce, transport, and mail delivery. All these aspects damaged by the pandemic imposed by the COVID-19 caused a real great economic impact, not only for the country in general, but also that each person suffers in a different way part of the Mexican economy.
What Roberto just told us is completely true. Each person and each family will suffer differently from this negative aspect of the pandemic. But Paula, what can you share with us about this aspect of you?
I agree completely with that Roberto says Mariana because the pandemic has brought us all Mexicans something negative. Many people have lost their job, other people have lost relatives, and that includes expenses that were not contemplated. For example, funeral expenses. Other families have had a family member with COVID, and this includes medications, treatment during and after COVID because the sequels and more things. So I agree.
That is for sure, and not only in the medical side, also we have to think in the economic and laboral side because there are a lot of Mexicans unemployed and therefore without economic supplies. So as a suggestion that which will help a lot of if needed will be that the people have in mind a possible saving bank on only use it for COVID-19 emergency or medical situation because there is too easy to spend the money but too difficult to keep it and get it.
I believe that all this information has been of a lot of help. maybe people will actually listen to us, and maybe finally they will realize that COVID-19 it won't be, and it was never a joke. As a final piece of information, I would like to make a comparison. As we know, we have lost a lot of people, but does the Mexican population is aware of the amount of people that we have lost, of the medical service especially? Because I don't think so. In comparison with other countries, Mexico is the country number one in loss of medical service, with 1,320 losses, which leaves United States in second place with 1,077 losses, and the United Kingdom with 649 losses. Yeah, it's awful, but I personally don't think that Mexican population cares about the last fact. So if I can ask you something, it will be to please be cautious of the situation and don't stop taking care of yourself. All of us started to think about the old days when life was easier and there wasn't a world pandemic, and we tried to think about a solution. Unfortunately, we don't have that much power to make it real, but I think our idea was a good one. Actually, Wendy, why don't you tell them, to all the people that is listening, what our solution was?
Well, while we were thinking, we got to the conclusion that as a solution for most of the consequences, the government could implement a law or some reform to give jobs to those that were unemployed because of the COVID-19, and also help with the study to the people that have not finished their study for the same reason.
Well, we don't lose anything thinking about possible solutions. But anyway, our time is finished. We are done. We must say goodbye. I hope you all have enjoyed our podcast, and that now all of you are a little bit more informed about the consequences that the beloved COVID-19 will leave us in the next decade. We'll see you in another time, and of course, thanks to Wendy, Paola, and Roberto for being here.